So yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me try to pull my screen real quick. Yeah, so basically the continuous onboarding, sorry, I'm trying to find out the issue. All right, I got it. Can you all see my screen? Yeah? Okay. So yeah, the continuous onboarding is something that Growth has been exploring the couple of last weeks. So basically, we had a very first flow on onboarding that was using an issue board. I did a showcase on this. And moving on from there, we're thinking about how can we continuously onboarding user through the app. And one of the main flow that we want to tackle is the one that you have here. And it is set up that way because basically what we identify from the data is that users that go through create and verify and then create a group are basically moving from being free users to happy paid customers. So for us, it seems that they're kind of seeing GitLab value through this flow. So the continuous onboarding is looking into this from the aspect of a user joins the app. And then the first 90 days, we're going to try to basically ask him to complete this couple of steps. And what we want to observe out of this is like, is this basically successful? Like, do people engage more with verify? Do people engage more with create? And then overall, like, are they seeing product value? So we had a user flow that we wanted to go to test on this, which is this one. And basically, we would divide those 90 days into 3 big parts. The first one would be the setup. The second is plan and execute, and then deploy. So in setup, we would go through verify and create as fast as possible. Sorry, as soon as possible, not as fast as possible. And then moving on to plan and execute. So here we would be more focused on the planning features, and then deploy would probably be release. But that's like a longer term plan. Like really right now, what we're looking at is like set up your workspace part. And basically we're kind of having an exploration phase on how we can best support this flow in the app. So is it with what we already have, which is the self-served onboarding, so the issue board, or is it with something else? And this is where this sidebar thingy comes into play. We're thinking about, okay, so maybe this is a good way for us to display like those tasks to be completed within the app. So it's covering part of CI because it's important and it's part of verify. But it's also covering create, basically, and probably some other tasks, such as, I don't know, creating a SSH key to be able to push to your repo. But this is something that we don't know yet. And for now, we have these ideas, so we're going to test it. We're trying to get user testing lined up as soon as possible. And then we'll probably do some A/B testing before committing to one solution or the other. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I just had a brief look at this, and I will send you some issues and just whatever resources that I have around the pipeline editor, so you can better align the specific part of the setting up your pipeline workflow to the improvements that we're currently making with the pipeline editor, because I think a lot of the features that we're working on will be especially helpful for first-time users. So
Sure.
yeah, I will just write directly on this issue later today.
Cool.
Yeah, and this is hi, sorry I'm late. My computer decided Monday morning was the perfect time to do a bunch of updates. So But this is exactly what we want to test with continuous onboarding. And that's sort of what Dav and I, we talked about last week, which is we on growth are looking at the very top of the funnel. So we're looking at how do we get more users introduced to pipelines, and what is the experience for their very first pipeline, as opposed to, Nadia, what you're talking about in your UX research issue, where there's the first pipeline and then there's how does the user engage with an existing GitLab CI file? How do we educate them on new things that they can do? And so we're really focused on that top of the funnel, and I think it'll be a great thing to test different ways in that continuous onboarding to, maybe push them directly to the pipeline editor, or push them directly to, I don't know, even just as an example, a video explaining how to get started. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that we could come up with as a test to figure out what works best for that first action. So I'm excited to have that platform to be able to test all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we have, I mean, I don't know if you've been introduced to this also, but there's a counterpart to that continuous onboarding issue, which we just got the green light to start working on, and it is a complementary onboarding flow in email. So we're going to build an email onboarding flow directly into the product. So it's going to try to guide users through the same actions, starting with creates, working on verify, then starting a trial and adding teammates to their namespace. So the idea there is we want to capture people who are heavily engaged with the UI and use continuous onboarding to get them to engage with the right parts of the application that we know make them successful. But there's also this subset of people who maybe aren't as engaged with the UI, or have logged in and sort of maybe didn't take the right action to stay engaged on that first step. So we need to re-engage them somehow, and email is the best way to do that. So there's a kind of a two-pronged approach to get those folks engaged. This is also the same thing with the theme here is we're trying to get the team to be successful. So we'll send these emails, let's say if the namespace or instance hasn't taken this action, we'll send emails to everyone in that namespace or instance that can do this. We'll send them this series until that namespace or instance actually takes this action. So that's what we're trying to guide the team to do.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Jensen. I think it's going to be really cool, very helpful for first-time users. What's the timeline for this, or approximate timeline? Because I see there's lots of exploration happening, but just so I can kind of point to the right issues, and Kevin and I can really align the UX for the CI onboarding.
Yeah, it's a great question. For these email campaigns, they sort of became urgent after getting approval from marketing, because marketing wants to do testing of the content before they do a bunch of work to move some of this stuff into Marketo. So we're actually starting to break this down this milestone, and we'll probably do work through next milestone. So on this product email campaigns, and then the continuous onboarding. Remember that a lot of these are shared. They're shared epics across growth. So we'll start working on continuous onboarding probably this milestone, but that won't be me. That will be Sam Oweziak's team, the conversion team. And so they'll start working on continuous onboarding as soon as they can get to it. They're doing the same thing that we are, which is sort of like some introductory, some low-hanging fruit tests, and then they'll move on to continuous onboarding. So we're sort of taking a multi-pronged approach. Like my engineers will take on the emails, and his will take on the UI and the continuous onboarding part.
Okay.
But then the idea is that all of growth will leverage those assets to do testing. So, you know, we can still do any testing we want on that CI portion, you know, how we get users to engage with CI.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so we will have the pipeline editor MVC released in 13.7, I think. Dove, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're still on track for that. And yeah, and you on the growth side are tracking the work around the tests for the default template. So I think we're more or less aligned there. I'll just make sure that I send whatever issues and design assets to Kevin so we can align on what the flow will look like and collaborate on the mockups. But it seems like the timeline is all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to. Yes, so I want to maybe steer the conversation a bit and not talk about the features where we can talk about it in the issues themselves, and try to talk more about the process. And that's okay. And I think that like what we are trying to form, and like for me it's the first time that I'm collaborating with the growth team, is try to understand how can we best like collaborate. You know, we have PMs, we have designers from all sides. There are like multiple initiatives to drive adoptions, and I think like the work that we are doing until now is good work, but I want to make sure we streamline this experience, so it will be easier for us to collaborate in the future iteration, because I feel it can. I mean, if we continue the way we are and like working on like point issues and specific areas without the right process, the cognitive overhead, at least I'm feeling it, would increase and would be unmanageable. So I was wondering, like, how can we best form a process and where we'll have like, first of all, a single source of truth. We'll know which team is working on what and where is the right place for us to see the status. This is number one. And the second thing is, how can we stream more work toward the growth team? Is it like to meetings, to issues? Should we like ping you on areas where we think it will be best for you to participate? Like what's the best approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just, I mean, to be clear, we've never worked this closely with these teams either. So this is a new process for us also. Before we were driving a much more ambiguous and just like larger business goals. So we were just all over the place. So there's the first thing I think is that I'd like to sort of reduce the scope that we're focused on, because we're not really going to be focused on the whole editor experience. We really only care about that first pipeline and that first interaction. So when we're talking about the process, I want to make sure that that's like growth is, we're really only going to be involved in that sort of first 90 days in that onboarding process of like getting them up and running with pipelines and doing testing around what's the best way to do that. So I want to make sure that's clear.
Jensen, you had shown a project that you talked about some time back, which you also mentioned that it has recently been cleared and you would be starting to work on it. I mean, your team. Could you share the link for that in the document? There's an effort that's in the Verify.CI group that Tao and I were thinking of starting to work on. And I have put the link for that in the agenda as well. So that's something that we are thinking about. Like since you talked about how to like cater to users which are at different phases with their experience with the application, right? So this this particular idea or concept, it talks about like, let's say if I am a user of GitLab CI or maybe not, and I'm interested in this particular feature. So kind of setting up a project beforehand for them and making it available for a certain period of time, not maybe forever, which would primarily to teach them or to educate or let them play with one certain feature. I mean, the configuration of that project would be focusing on one feature rather than everything that CI is about. So having playground like projects preset for them to play with, or making it available because they have shown interest and they want to play with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that the open question that I have that we're focused on testing right now is what is the best way to get a user to spin up their first pipeline. And so most of the tests that I'm working on are looking to answer that question in some way, which is should we walk them through a simple example that means nothing to their application, like a hello world type example as an initial setup step, or should we walk them through things that actually that they're actually trying to accomplish with their application, like deploying to AWS, for example, right? So what should be the first thing that we walk them through? And so that what you're talking about fits much more into the second, which is show them things that they care about, that they're trying to accomplish with their application. And so we're absolutely happy to work on that. I think what we want to do is compare that in a test to like walking them through a simple setup and see which one drives more initial pipeline usage. That's the type of thing that I think we bring to the table on growth is helping to test the assumptions that you all are making on like the best ways to onboard folks. We can come in and test those assumptions. So when Dav's talking about the process, I think it would be amazing if we could sort of call out those assumptions when we see them in that initial pipeline setup, and growth will come in and help test those assumptions, and we can make sure we're making investments in the right place. So I mean, if we're going to call out a part of a process, I would love to see that as part of the process.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, I think we have like few ways, like few areas where I know me and Nadia are like, I would say almost guessing what would be like the right approach. So the first thing is the hello world template, where like we are debating if users would like to see a more advanced template or more simple one. And it's really like I think it's an awesome example on how should we test this assumption, because I'm hearing like different users are asking for different things. Some ask for like the really complex one, and the other, hey, I just want to see like a simple example. So this can be like, I think this is what we are working on, and this is something we can continue like introducing more and more complex template if we realize that user want, and until we'll say, okay, that's as far as they can digest. So this is something I would like to see like us improving in that direction. The other way is the other way that we'll start working on are templates. We know the templates are a great way to start pipeline, and the question is again, how complex, how much, which type of template? Is it like a subset of a template or a whole one? So this is something I know that Nadia is working. I would very much like us to come up with some sort of a hypothesis and then say, okay, can you help us test that? So I think that could be like two ways where we can collaborate, and I can think about more ways where we can like ask you to test our hypothesis or assumptions.
Yeah, that would be great. Even like in what you just stated, the designs that I've seen are like templates for Node.js, as opposed to like we could also do testing on should we show them code-based templates or should we show them jobs to be done, like deployed to AWS or whatever, and it doesn't matter what language it's being used and stuff like that, right? So that's we can really delve deep in testing those different types of things, and we would love to help you do that.
Okay. And in terms of like where should we or how should we track the process in terms of the process, like issues that we are working on, like what would be like the best way for us to go and see, okay, what is the growth team is working on that is related to like pipeline authoring or CI? Is it like the planning issue somewhere in the handbook or both? So
that's generally, we keep the source of truth in the planning issue. And part of the reason for that is because, you know, on growth, we shouldn't make assumptions as to necessarily like what the next highest priority would be, because if one of our tests fails, we might have to come up with another test to figure out like, oh man, we have a completely different question. Why did this test fail? And we have to come up with a new test to figure out why it failed, right? So we have to leave some of these things open so that we can be a little bit more agile in focusing like on our tests and figuring out what the real answers are, or even like maybe a test passed, but we don't know why. We might have to come up with a test to figure out what the exact action is. So we leave it a little bit open, and I know that that's probably frustrating for you all, and that's I definitely, you know, not having a long-term roadmap has really like been one of the, I think, key areas of frustration for you all. What we can do, we can lay out the big questions that we're trying to answer with you all, and then put the test items underneath those big questions. You know, like for example, the onboarding issue, right? Should we onboard users onto a common example? That would be the question. And then we can just list, here are the tests we're going to do to test that assumption. And that it will get more issues over time underneath of those. But we could do something like that. And I'm happy to put that on the handbook or on, you know, anywhere that you all want. But the source of truth for what we're actually working on in the milestones should probably be the planning issue, just to leave some of that flexibility.
Cool. Okay, yeah, I think it makes sense, and I think we can also help you to come up with some assumption, even like the email campaign, like what types of email should we like follow this email with an example or not? Like the same assumption that we assume for our product, we can assume for the emails, and we can test that, see what pays off more. So I think it makes sense.
Exactly.
In terms of like when you will implement, so we are implementing the Hello World test, for instance. When do you expect us to see like initial result? Is it normally at the end of the iteration? Is it like starting to flow in as we finish the implementation?
Yeah, so it'll start to flow in. we've launched those 2 0-state tests. I don't know if they're live right now, but they're done. The engineering work is done. So that was done on Friday of last week. So we'll probably figure out how to get those launched. That should give us an idea of how long these tests actually take, because you have to run them till they reach statistical significance, or until you just get tired of looking at the data because they'll never reach statistical significance. And we don't really know at this point how long it's going to take to reach statistical significance on some of these tests. I don't think it'll take very long. We get like hundreds of thousands of signups, and this is one of the areas that people engage with first. So I would say each test might take a maximum of 2 weeks, but we should see there. In most of the tests that we've run at GitLab, you start to see where the test is leaning early on in the test process, and then you're just waiting for it to get to significance. So I would say within a week we should have results, and then we solidify those results, a couple days later. And those I think we can come up with a handbook page on our side, on the growth side, to share the findings with you. And those should all be like Periscope dashboards that lay out, success. And so I think the best place to keep that would be in the handbook on our side, where we'll just list the tests that we've run and the results. And I'll make sure to share that with you all.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, I think we are at time. Anyone else have something to ask, maybe?
So yeah, just for action items, it sounds like I have a few, which is to lay out the top questions that we're trying to answer and the issues that we're actively working on to answer those questions, and then make sure you all are on the planning issue, and also create the MR for our handbook page to share the results with you, and I'll tag you in that also.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, makes sense. And as I mentioned, as you come up with those questions, let's collaborate. We can probably help you also add more.
Makes sense.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jensen.
Thank you all.
And everyone
Thank
else.
you all. Thus far, I've really loved the collaboration. I know we're working out some of the kinks, but I think we've been working really well together. So I really appreciate you allowing us to step in your space and do that.
Yeah, I agree. We appreciate, and we also, from our side, appreciate all the help that you can provide. There is a lot of ground to cover, and there is always things to do. Cool. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.